surely this isn't a problem here in Chapin, South Carolina based on the week we had last week. Good grief. Well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you so Stuart, okay, what am I, a 20% or 80%? I'll tell you. If you're a 20%er, you'll be going where Jesus went. You'll be seeing what Jesus saw. You'll be feeling what he felt. And you'll be doing what he did. Or at least trying to do those things. Nobody's ever herded sheep before, so this is probably going to be a review. But there's this phenomenon, there's this way that sheep are led to slaughter. So I want you to picture with me an image. Here's the packing house, right? You got the slaughterhouse attached to the packing house. And there's hundreds of nervous sheep standing outside. They're freaking out because guess what? They don't have a leader. They don't know what to do. They're in a strange environment. They sense danger because everything's different. They have no idea what to do. Then here is a gate that opens. And from this gate and down a ramp comes a goat. Now this goat is called anybody know? The Judas goat. The goat is called the Judas goat. He's what they do in order to get the sheep to walk up the ramp. So mental movie time. We got the ramp. We've got the Judas goat and the sheep. Oh, I'm freaking out, right? All these. This is bad. I know it, right? And then here's the Judas goat. He's like, come on, come with me, right? He gets up halfway. He stops. He looks back and he bays at them. He gets their attention. Here's someone you can follow. You can follow me. Goes up a few more steps. This time he just simply turns around and looks. And so what do the sheep do? They follow him. He leads them up a ramp. At the very end of the ramp, he takes a hard left. The door that he goes through closes. The only option for them, for the herd, is to turn right. Well, what's waiting past door number 2, folks? The slaughterhouse. Bad. The end. That wasn't funny. My bad. That's a very dramatic illustration of the unthinking, herdish behavior and the deadly consequences of just sheep. Sounds a whole lot like culture. Sounds a whole lot like the world. Now listen, the Amber Alert was designed to stop the Judas goats, the wolves in sheep clothing, who were preying upon our children, right? And for the record, it's working. For the record, it's working. Since 1997, 523 children have been recovered through Amber Alerts. I'll take that. You know why? They push people. They push people as they were going through life to pay attention and to see what's really there. You've got the description of what it looks like to be a child in trouble because we've given it to you. They really see it. And because they're trying to really see it, they feel it. And that causes the opportunity for action. It's working, isn't it? It works for me. The same type of sensitivity is what Jesus is challenging us to as Christians. It's the same type of thing. Now, there are Judas goats, wolves in sheep clothing, who are leading multitudes to destruction. They're doing it through drugs, excessive use of alcohol, sex, power, wealth, even religion. Now, what are we doing about this? As a church, we're doing a lot about this, aren't we? Listen to what Jesus said in John 4. I'll encourage you to go look at it later because I'm running short on time. But this is John 4. We're going to read verses 35 through 38. Jesus is saying, don't you say there are still 4 months, then comes the harvest? Listen to what I'm telling you. Open your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ready for harvest. The reaper is already receiving pay and gathering fruit for eternal life. So the sower and reaper can rejoice together. For in this case, the saying is true. One sows and another reaps. I sent you to reap what you didn't labor for. Others have labored, and you have benefited from their labors. Most of you know that a group of us just recently traveled to Brazil. And we had a twofold mission. One was, up here somebody comes in and says, man, we got a real problem. He said, what's the problem? We don't have a place to live. And I said, well, there's weak care and good works. And then I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. But in Brazil, they say, there's this family that doesn't have a place to live. And the church says, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll build them a house. Wow, that's quantum thinking. And, let's not talk about the finances of it or whatever, but the church built a house, and we had a team that did it in a week. Built a house 27 meters by about 27. No, not 27 meters, 9 meters by 9 meters. I think it was 27 feet by 27 feet. 15 people lived in this house. 15. They've been living in a house half that size. But I'll tell you what, it'd be better to be crammed in a small house than be living out under the elements, wouldn't it? On the other side of us, we were working, trying to take just an evangelical mission, a Bible concept to the people that were there. And so fast forward a little bit. We had a great week there. On the same day, here's what we saw. Back to the Amber Alert idea. We had a group of students who were doing home visits, and they're walking down the road. And right here in the curb sits a young lady who was bawling her eyes out. She'd just been sexually molested by her father. Yeah, that stinks. My heart felt that. There's another group of us just a couple of hours later who are doing home visits. We're about 2 hours late. And we're in this house. And Grace, for the record, I don't even think she knew. All 3 generations in a family met Christ at the same time. Now, I don't know about you. I've been doing this a while. I ain't never seen 3 generations come to Christ at once. That knocked my socks off. Kids, mama, and grandmama all met Jesus at the same time. Now, what am I saying that for? Well, we got our mission trip eyes on, and we went off, and we looked, we paid attention, we felt, we had compassion, we saw things that God did, and it was amazing. Let me just tell you, God hadn't really opened my eyes yet then. Wednesday night, God opened my eyes. They set up a flatbed trailer in the middle of Rio Vermelho, Brazil, which is this little village. And make-piece, thrown-together PA, thrown-together band, me speaking. It couldn't have been all that great. And yet, it was wild what God did. It was like the way we looked didn't matter. The sound couldn't have mattered that much. And I would have to tell you that the messenger couldn't matter much either. And yet, there was an outpouring of the Holy Spirit. Now, I just got to be candid with you. As soon as I finished teaching, I told the story of my father and his coming to Christ and the miracles of his being healed of demonism and all those things, and you can go hear my story. But when I walked off the stage, it was just like, wow, I walked back. I tried to find a place to hide. And I don't say this to give credit to myself. I don't say this for anything more than to say, okay, all right, God got your attention, I see. But I went back behind that flatbed, and I sat on the floor, and we call it snubbing. Right? I bawled my eyes out, and I couldn't put my finger on what is the deal. I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I finally kind of thought I was okay. And then I walked up, and I started to take a few more steps, and it hit me again. I just couldn't stop. I could not get control of myself. I was falling apart. I didn't know if I was having a nervous breakdown. I didn't know. So I did what a Christian does. I went and found 2 people that I knew, if nothing else matters, as I collapse mentally and go off into the white room, at least they'll carry me there. And I went and found Missy, and I found Brenton, and I'm boo-hooing. And I really couldn't put my finger on what. And then one of them said something, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody said this. They said, well, it's just Jesus, Stuart. And they thought I was crying because of what God had been doing that night. I'm going to give you the God's honest witness from my heart right now. I had no idea what God was doing. I had to look around and see that there was a mass of people that were just absolutely pouring their hearts out to God. I was clueless because that wasn't what was bothering me at all. Let me tell you what was bothering me. What was bothering me was, in spite of that, what was bothering me was the fact that God gave me this impression. He let me see that place. He let me feel for that place, and He let me realize that this place is doomed. If something doesn't change, it's doomed. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, man, these dads are messing up their kids, and there's drugs, and there's alcohol, and there's all these problems, and there's all these issues. And then it wasn't until I got home that God nailed that down for me. Here's what I want you to understand. The biggest problem there wasn't the fact that fathers were molesting their kids, although that's terrible. The problem isn't the fact that as we walk down the roads at 9:30 in the morning, the men of the city are already drunk, even though that's terrible. The problem wasn't that drugs are really moving into the city for the people that have the money, and the ones that don't, they sell their kids as prostitutes to pay for their habits. That's bad, but that's not the real problem. What God let me see is the real problem was these people are lost. They're lost. They've got a gaping hole. in the middle of their existence, in that soul that nothing has ever fit, and they're trying everything they can find to make it fit. And the evidences of their lostness and the fact that nothing fits and nothing works is the way they're acting. And God let me see that. God let me feel it. God let me feel the fact that all around us, in spite of this movement, people were going to die and go to hell without Him in immeasurable numbers. And it was more than I could bear. And I really didn't get over it all week. I'm still not really over it. Because I'm trying to process what that means here. Because let's just assume that it's true. And we know that it is. Why did we see that stuff in Brazil? We got our mission trip eyes on. Right? We went and did our mission trip thing. We got ready to go. You know what? We don't got to go around the world to find issues. We don't have to go around the world to find people who feel weary and worn out and cast aside and worthless like sheep without a shepherd. All we got to do is go around the corner. All you got to do is go across the cafeteria at your workplace or your school. All you got to do is go down the hallway in some families. Why don't we? Because we don't see them. We don't see them like that. We're too busy doing life to be life, to share life, and to see what life's really about. In view of all these things that we're talking about, are we 20%ers? Or are we 80%ers? I'm going to tell you, I'm convicted. I'm convinced that I'm no better than anybody else. I'm no better than anybody else. I told the first service, and I'll tell you, if you know me well, you'll know that I process information by talking about it. And so anytime I stand in front of a group of people and teach, there may be this assumption that, I'm just preaching at people. Shoot, man, God's carving me like a Thanksgiving turkey. Because I talk through these principles and God's let me see myself.